Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Morgan. I'm from Nutrition Integrated, and we provide a lot of data and insight support to customers in this show regarding multiple high trend topics. So that could include, of course, things like GLP-1, as has been discussed many times. But one of the most interesting topics that people are really interested in today, because every single one of you, of course, can resonate with this, is this idea of longevity. The reframing, the renaming, the reimagining of longevity. Maybe it's a sort of health and wellness for everybody, but of course it sort of brings this whole world of healthy aging, which we've known for a long time, but kind of give it a new definition in 2026 that feels like it resonates a little bit more with more consumers. Underneath longevity, of course, you've got some really interesting areas which seem to be at the forefront and accelerating people's sort of excitement in this space. That is definitely cellular health, and in specifically mitochondrial health, which I'll talk to you about today. So we're going to take you on a bit of a framing, kind of give you a sense of what this looks like in today's world, real life, products, applications, and how the consumer seems to be engaging with it, and hopefully you can resonate with that and think what it could mean for you. So let me take you on this little journey over the next 10 to 20 minutes and tell you a little bit about it. Interesting slide to start, but if you focus on the quote, very much we see that more and more people are genuinely talking about this idea of living forever. Now, I don't think for 1 second everyone in this room wants to never die necessarily or live forever. But you are seeing people, and it's typically the most powerful people in the world, are interested to try and say how can they prolong their life for a very long time. So as strange as it might seem, in 2026, genuinely, people are sitting there going, can we live forever? Now, I'm not the scientist who could praise or critique whether that is truly possible. I suspect not in my lifetime. But the point is, it is a real world discussion that people are having. Now, I will also just point you to the title of the article to which this quote is referred to. To them, aging is a technical problem, which in itself is an interesting framing and concept here. Technical, biohacking, thinking about that. But also, it's something that we can be fixed, and it's something about the powerful and the rich. So again, it's just giving this context of what kind of discussions are out there and how people are framing them. But this is, in fact, what a lot of people are starting to put into the picture under the concept of longevity. Now, the background to this, of course, is asking everyone in this room, what is your motivations to age? Now, on the previous slide, you would get the impression, of course, that if you're very powerful, you might want to maintain your power and then live forever. If you just look at a very basic modeling of age, then of course, over time, we kind of deteriorate. I'm sorry that sounds quite negative, but the reality is, with age, we are, getting to different points of our life. And really, everyone in this room has got a choice. Do you want to be the top line, or do you want to be the bottom line? Because every day is a pixel in your high definition picture. So everything you choose today in terms of how many steps you walk, what snacks you choose, what meal choices, what drinks, exercise choices, everything is a pixel in a high definition picture. So the better you are today, cumulatively, kind of the better health you'll have in the future, in theory. And of course, that's you more as the top line, to which you'll manage life with less chance of disease. Living with 10 years disease before you die is typically kind of an average. Or, of course, some people will have a more pronounced decrease of health over time with age. And really, that individual variation is what everyone in this room is trying to address in some form. So the question about longevity, healthy aging is, what are the motivations? It's not quite the forum to do a hands up for everything, but have a think about this. Is someone trying to remove the endpoint? And there are some people who are trying to remove the endpoint. Are some people trying to extend the endpoint? They want to live till 150, and some people are desperately trying to do that. Or is it more so that there's a greater amount of people who are just trying to live the top line as opposed to the lower line, and therefore maximize their life years today, obviously with the lens of tomorrow? Which does actually ask the question, what is longevity if it's not just a reframing of health and wellness? Because to some extent, anything you consume today that's healthy, to some extent, is a longevity product, which I'll come to. I think we've lost some. Oh, there we go. We're back. But that's the framing. And I guess the question we're asking yourselves is your motivation. And if you're trying to think about this category and the connection with consumers, The product execution, the brand that you might create, the way the ingredients are framed, does actually intimately reflect this in many different ways. Because a lot of people are saying longevity is a major trend, but what does that really look like? Now, this trend is manifested by a couple of major things. Now, probably the most prominent one, if you spent time in the US, is a guy called Brian Johnson. He's very much of the opinion that you can live forever. So he will do the whole don't die, the man who wants to live forever, and he's looking to engineer his life for the purposes of, proving that he can stay around. So he'll do multiple things, some of which you would all assume you wouldn't want to do, but then on other situations when it comes back to what his blueprint is selling in terms of supplements, some of it's some basic sort of polyphenol-based strategies. But ultimately, Brian is very much framing a biohacking, longevity, sort of cellular health type proponent to be able to live forever. But you also have a much sort of, I guess, area that people are interested in, which is the blue zones. So those people that have lived to 100, so the centenarians, and you've seen via Netflix and other areas, people framing the blue zones, to which there's 4, maybe 5, depending on your strict definitions of the blue zones, and you can find those in various parts of the world. And what's wonderful about this group is we've been determined to know more about them to try and work out, of course, why have they lived to 100? Now, when common sense prevails, what you tend to find is they eat well, they eat more natural foods, they exercise a lot, but probably what gets discussed less, but is really important, goes beyond the realms of this presentation, is the sense of community, belonging, relationships, and I think very much the psychological component of it. And I'm sure that you'll have sort of heard that anecdote of when an older person passes away, their partner passes away quite quickly after. It's sort of that sense of belonging and community, I think, places a lot of emphasis on why certain groups in the world may live to 100 or more. But in terms of the centenarians, we're just really fascinated with them, and of course they give us a really good understanding of what a good healthy life can contribute to in terms of being able to live a longer life, but also with high quality health span. And then finally, it's worth reflecting on a more of a psychological component. You probably don't know who the chap is on the picture. This is actually a Dutch person. He's called Emil. Now, if you weren't aware, you all have an age. Now, that age is something you don't typically tell everybody. Sometimes you do. Some people will ask you. Some people just go, I'm 21 every day. That's my new birthday. And the point here is that Emil actually took himself to court to change his age. He actually said, I'm 69, but I don't feel 69. So why is the world stereotyping me as a 69-year-old? I am actually feeling biologically, either maybe from some testing, or something. He took himself to court to change his age. You'll possibly be quite pleased to know that that didn't or was not allowed, because it brings up some societal questions of when you can drink, when you can drive, and all of those types of things. But the point is, how many people in straw poll, how many people in this room genuinely feel their age? Not many of you. So then the question is, it probably is the last frontier of identity politics. And so the whole concept here is, actually, there's a really big reframing of how we view age, how we view different life stages. And what you tend to find is we've got a massive breakdown of the assumptions between age and stage. And in a positive way, most of us in this room are desperate to live more of an ageless life. In fact, societally, we've all moved into slightly late, pushed everything back in stages. So we kind of go into our bigger jobs a little bit later. We're having children a little bit later. You're getting married later. And do you know what you all want to do? You all want to spend more time in kidulthood. So not adulthood, but kidulthood. And it's basically everyone saying they're desperately trying to live a more optimal life today for tomorrow. And actually, whilst we've got centenarians and while we've got Brian Johnsons of this world framing the idea to live forever, actually what it's also doing, it's just framing a greater degree of people's ability to try and understand what they do today for living a healthier life tomorrow. And actually that is encompassing a different view on what longevity is and general health and wellness. I will just point out that a lot of the framing, particularly around the Brian Johnson, does feel very male-centric. And if you read a lot around this, there's a lot of space where the truth is longevity looks very different for women. Right now, 80% of that conversation is just men talking to men. I'd probably actually kind of agree when I think about what you'll see across the show, what you'll see in very different mediums. The point is, longevity means different things to everyone in this room. It could be a different point on that graph, endpoint, longer endpoint, removing an endpoint, a different version of that graph. It can be many different things, and we have to be mindful of that when you're thinking about how to bring this to life. Now, in terms of what is a longevity range of products, that's a really interesting thing when you think about the category. So this is a very simple way to, that if you were to go online now and shop longevity, people will shop by ingredient. I want some vitamin C. They might shop by concern. I need to improve my immune health. I might shop by category. I might shop by diet. I might shop by gender, and so on. The interesting thing here is you could add a longevity in there, but is there anything on here that's not longevity focused, really? That's the question. So what is a longevity area? Now, the subtle shift on the slide is, as longevity has evolved, and it can mean different things to different people, probably the one area that's manifesting itself is we are seeing now categories appearing online as longevity. You're seeing the concerns shift from immunity, joint and bone and muscle and liver and heart, and they're moving to cellular health, mitochondrial health, or just energy more specifically in general. And you're seeing an evolution of the terminology and of these benefits. So if you go to many sites now in Europe, in America, or in Asia, you'll see drop downs under the concerns around cellular health, mitochondrial health. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, and you're seeing the longevity category present itself in that space. The question is, again, is what is a longevity product? If you were to go to a big traditional dietary supplements brand and search longevity or something similar or healthy aging, you'll see some relatively products that you would expect, hair, skin and nails and collagen. Or you could do what some brands have done and created brands and products where there's been an age stipulation on there. So the Optimum Nutrition Sports Nutrition range, Fit 40, doesn't exist in today's world. Applied Nutrition have created a 40 well-being type range, and you can see they've decided to have some organ shield. There's a mass application of what could a product be within an healthy aging space. Now, in reality, if you were going to move into this world, probably the primary area that people are interested in, as the story unfolds, of course, is the application of the hallmarks of aging. So what happens is people go, well, it's really hard to be a longevity brand if really you're just bringing out products that have existed for decades to some extent. So the grounding tends to be this underpinning view of trying to become more foundational in the approach. So if you were to map the hundreds of brands that now appearing globally in this space, which is what we do, you typically find that the hallmarks of aging are appearing in the way that products are being described and how they're being framed. And I'm definitely not the right one to tell you about all of these, but specifically the cellular senescence and the mitochondrial dysfunction would be the two, if we were to take all the claims that we see across products, would be the two we tend to see the most. And that's that sort of space. And of course, from a cellular perspective, you're looking at overall function and the resilience of the cell. From a mitochondrial point of view, then we would just, for the purpose of today, interpret it very much around the energy of the cell, and that makes sense. They're the big areas that we're looking at. And so you start to see some really interesting understanding of the consumer and the way brands are trying to engage with people to think about, this is all good, but what you need to do is go to a more foundational approach to health and wellness. And to do that, if you get into the cells and the mitochondria and you sort them out, everything else upstream will be better. Now, again, I'm not the scientist to tell you that's the right thing. That's just the approach the category is taking. And to be honest, it seems to make a lot of common sense. So that's the approach. What does that look like in terms of products? Wow. Well, I tell you what, we are seeing a ton of kind of newer, democratized, and specialists. So the title of this presentation is The Specialists versus Generalists. Effectively, you could have a brand that does everything, that brings out a longevity range. That's interesting, and that's also fine and commercially relevant. What you tend to find is the ones that really stoke the fire in the industry and they create a category that starts to get some momentum. It always starts with specialist brands that focus on a particular area. They tend to present it in a really beautiful way, and they bring it to life. And this is just a couple on the left. Solga on the right would, of course, be more of the generalist, where you can see people doing the, you have two ages, you can influence one, timeline, and I will just point out that some of these products are reasonably expensive. So I think you could definitely have a discussion about accessibility, but they are doing a wonderful job at talking about the components of cellular health and mitochondrial health specifically, and you're seeing some really nice hero ingredients start to come through. And more now, it doesn't just start there. I mean, for anyone who traveled to the US and Expo West, Youtheory is a lovely example of a brand getting on that train and bringing to life this idea of what it looks like. And what you can see if you've got good eyesight is longevity isn't about the living forever. So they're talking about building for the long game. But the more you get into this, there's some wonderful products, whether it's Dose & Co. and Avia and Biogena. They're great examples of products using ubiquinol, which is an ingredient that gets used a lot in this space and has good reason to do so. It's really sort of bringing to life different ways. Now, you'll see products in capsule tablet format, soft gel format. You'll see products in powdered format, shot format, as you'll see. Quickly, we're seeing them in gummies. So the rate of movement and accessibility is moving at a pace that typically reflects the way the industry has started to move, which is really, really quickly. So we're seeing a lot of really interesting products come to the market, and the question is then, how do you start to build a range? But again, it sort of comes to life there. Now, I thought I would actually continue this mold and give you a sense of what does this look like in store. So actually online, it's dead easy, isn't it? It's easy to present something that you can sort of put on an online environment quite quickly. But if you were to go to Vitamin Shop in America already, you can go shop the longevity booth. Now, if you look at the longevity booth, again, you've got this curated space. At the top, it says daily support for improving your health span and living your best life. Again, optimizing today for tomorrow. Now, traditionally, it's been very hard to convince people to consume something today for tomorrow because it's not tangible. Oh, I wonder how I'll feel in 15 years' time, whereas people are very much in the now. It's just that more and more people, maybe more like 30s onwards, into their 40s, appreciate that they feel righteous about today, but can closer perceive their future. It's actually more of a generational shift because we, having moved through this industry, understand what our parents have to now go through health span, lifespan. So we are making that link far more than you would have done 20 years ago, if that makes sense. So you've got this whole generational shift that happens, that people are becoming just more interested in this at an earlier age. So this longevity category exists. It's being presented directly to consumers in stores, in a nutraceutical environment. And what I love about it is at the top, they've actually taken something else in terms of creatine, and that's kind of reimagined itself into this space. You then have a whole shelf dedicated to the hero need of cellular health and mitochondrial health. You then have hero ingredients, and then they've shopped the rest of the store to bring it in. And actually what's really wonderful is you're seeing just new ways to express products, particularly around the whole mitochondrial health position coming in. And if you're thinking about ingredients like ubiquinol, then they play in these core areas within this category, and they're bringing that to life either as a single ingredient product or within formulations. And those formulations, of course, will have wonderful naming conventions, and those naming conventions is what people resonate with. And they'll think, of course, that if they get to the more foundational part of life, then they'll be healthier today for tomorrow. It is a really fast accelerating landscape. What you're seeing is you're getting a lot of gummies appear in the market, which is like, is that indicative? I think it is indicative, because what you tend to find is that's really driven to be more accessible to more people. So the more gummies you see, it's sort of indirectly showing that people are really seeing an opportunity to get to more consumers around these components of mitochondrial health. You're seeing more applications because you can just measure your biological age relatively easily, it seems. You can even buy a longevity bar. I suspect you'll be able to buy a longevity donut pretty soon. I've found some other functional donuts recently. And you can even end up with the whole concept of cellular health and mitochondrial health underpinning traditional need states. So it can be the rationale that underpins joints. It could be the rationale that underpins hair, skin, and nails. It could be the rationale that could underpin any other condition, actually. So it's a really interesting evolution of the way people are appraising this. Now, you can't have a presentation in today's world without putting David Beckham on it, for no other reason than just that most people seem to like it. But actually, the case study of IM8 is a really good one, because to all intents and purposes, it is really a superfoods powder, reds, not greens, and you can have some fun looking at the way they compare themselves to other brands, particularly in AG1. But what they've done is they've supercharged that blend with the concept of longevity. So it's not just a blend of superfoods, and I don't want to make it sound simple because that's unfair to them, but what they've done is effectively they've supercharged it with this concept of longevity and all the aspects of it in terms of cellular mitochondrial health for the purposes of saying this is a better product. So you can buy the product on its own, or you can supercharge any other product with the concept of the hallmarks of aging. And that's interesting because it basically means there is no product category where this whole concept does not become relevant, and in fact is already appearing in the market today. Of course, this is all interesting, but some of the things that you need to think about in terms of if you were to develop a go-to-market strategy, whether you're a contract manufacturer, an ingredient supplier, whatever it might be, then you do kind of need to think about what is your definition of longevity, because it's good, it's a big concept, but do you really trying to be more specific in terms of living forever, or extending the life point, or just living a better life? There's slight nuance in the way that's communicated, and those things are really quite important to do. Tying that to the motivation of the consumer is important. It is a race to win. We've got, honestly, we track hundreds of specialist brands already that appear with products really emphasizing this space, and most people, we are besotted with the top 10 or the top 20 brands in any category. There are hundreds and thousands of brands that most of you don't know yet, but they all form a pixel in this picture of the category landscape, which you should all try to know more about, because they are the ones that are kind of moving the dial of how these trends evolve. And honestly, there are a lot. So there's a lot of specialists manifesting themselves now with products, with wonderful ingredients in these areas of mitochondrial health and similar, and bring them to life in multiple accessible ways. Interestingly, you're asking yourself, is it a product rebranded, or are you going to be more specific around the hallmarks of aging? And we're also seeing a whole lot of mashups. This would be one of the way that we would describe one of the key trends, is you're actually seeing loads of things come together. So we could talk at length about the blurring of nutraceuticals and sports nutrition and active nutrition, and the whole world has just lost all its fencing of being really nice pillars of what fits. I mean, it's just a massive sea now of all blurring of stuff. But we are now seeing this in women's health, linking to life stages. We are seeing it in sports performance. Think about legacy consumers. So those that have been in sports nutrition, I'm doing this because I'm older, so I've been in sports nutrition for 25 years. So my use of protein with secondary ingredients is far different today than it was when I was actually only 18. And actually, you're seeing more of a maturity of the way certain consumers are engaging with this. And of course, as we've shown before, the way that this component of longevity, mitochondrial health is moving into beauty as well. So you've got some really integrated mashups in that space. Think about format, experience, of course, it still needs to be experiential, and I'll come back to that. Price, honestly, there seems to be a really good precedent to charge quite high values for this. You can definitely, if you want to go to Switzerland, you can find some decent products for a small fry, 750 euros per month for a subscription. I'll leave it to decide if it's worth it. But technology also as an enabler is a really interesting space. But don't ever forget that the final area of innovation is not always product and ingredient, it's communication. If you can't communicate this stuff, you've got no chance. Literally no chance. Life is storytelling. It's narrating, it's kind of giving people the confidence that you're on the same wavelength, and that's what everything is about. In today's world, you need science, but you need connection, and you need to bring experience together. This is a brand from a friend of mine. You don't know what it is yet, but I still love the fact that they describe it like this when it comes to women's health. There is just ways of describing things in today's world. Now, that may or may not resonate with some, it will with others. The point is, in today's world, there's just a new way to try and bring products, messaging to life that just better resonates with consumers in 2026. That is what underpins probably the most fundamental shift of anything in our innovation scheme at the moment, which is the reimagine and the redefinition and the renaissance of things that have existed for years. We're just bringing them to life in just ways that people want to engage with, more relevant to today. So just to finish, you are all part of a group of people who would like to live more ageless. I've no doubt that we all do. You know, society more than ever is embracing this, the maximization of life. If you were to ask me the question of where would you put your dollar, I think the reality is you're probably talking about consuming today for tomorrow for the majority who are not trying to do anything crazy with their age per se. They're just trying to live a better life today. But I do believe that you're seeing more and more people look at the way they innovate products around the hallmarks of aging, to which mitochondrial health is a really interesting space that sits at the heart of that in terms of being more foundational in the approach. Of course, the challenge for brands is to combine quality ingredients with messaging that resonates, as we've just seen. But I'll just finish with this final point. It's a little bit of an interesting one, but there's a technology background to Moore's Law where they basically went, technology just doubled up so quickly, like really quickly. So we all sit here today, of course, thinking there's no way you'll be able to live forever before I've gone, right? And I, to be honest, fundamentally agree with that. I don't think it's going to happen. That said, the bigger concept is we're just trying to hang on for as long as possible because things are moving so quickly. If we can hang on to our health for long as possible, honestly, in 20 years, it'll be really interesting to see what more things are more accessible to enable us to live longer, whatever it might be. So maybe living long enough to live better actually might be something that you should think about. Other than that, thank you for being a wonderful audience. I hope that was of interest to you. This is what we do. We frame these macro trends and try to bring them to life in real ways. And hopefully you've taken an emotive story to go and use to your benefit. Thank you.